I found that for many job roles, people have a mental picture of that iconic task that uniquely defines that job role. For example, computer programmers write code, doctors maybe see patients, lawyers go to court to argue court cases. And I think that when people think about AI opportunities, often it's instinctual to say, can AI do that most iconic role or that most iconic task of that job? But I found that when we actually systematically analyze the tasks that a particular job is made up of, the best opportunities may or may not be that first initial instinct. Let's take a look at a few examples. If you look at the tasks that a computer programmer does, they do write code, and so it's tempting when thinking about AI for computer programming to ask, can AI help write code? But it turns out computer programmers do many other things. They have to write documentation, they sometimes respond to user support requests. They often review others' code, and they often gather requirements for what a piece of software is intended to do. And if you were to evaluate the generative AI potential for this job, you may find that writing code can be helped with AI, but it's a relatively difficult task. But maybe writing documentation is actually easier to do with generative AI, and so on. Don't take the generative AI potential column too seriously in these examples, since these are informal evaluations. And if we're to do a rigorous evaluation based on technical feasibility and business value, your specific conclusions may be different. But I think that it's actually easier to get generative AI to write documentation for code than to actually write the code itself. And in many different job roles, the best potential for AI may not be the most obvious first task you might think of. Let's look at another example. Lawyers spend a lot of time drafting and reviewing legal documents. They often have to answer clients' questions on how to interpret laws. If preparing for a court case, they'll have to review evidence, and sometimes they're involved in negotiating settlements, and sometimes they represent clients in court. And I find that a systematic listing out of these tasks, as well as a systematic evaluation of their potential, may sometimes lead to interesting conclusions. So I think that there's a high potential for generative AI to help with drafting and reviewing legal documents, as well as maybe with interpreting laws, whereas I can't see a lawyer sending a robot to court to argue on their behalf, at least not for some time. And so if you work at a law firm, an analysis like this might help you decide where you actually want to use generative AI. One more example, landscaping. A landscaper has to maintain and care for plants, purchase and transport plants, maintain equipment, communicate with clients, maintain a business website, and so on. I'm listing, of course, just a subset of the tasks that any of these job roles do. If you were to do an analysis yourself, you may end up with anywhere from 5 to 15 to 30 tasks per job role. And in this case, I think most of these tasks actually have pretty low generative AI potential. And so the work of a landscaper may be less impacted in the next few years by generative AI compared to computer programmers and lawyers. So that's how you can analyze jobs by breaking it down into tasks. And I encourage you to think through what are the tasks in your work and where generative AI may be able to help, or for the business you may be involved in, to think about how generative AI could help many different tasks in that business. When people think about augmentation or automation, people's minds often go initially to cost savings, because if you automate something, seems like you can, save money. But in most ways of technology innovation, going back all the way to, say, the invention of the steam engine, to electricity, to the computer, many companies started off thinking about cost savings, but ended up actually putting even more of their effort into pursuing revenue growth. And that's because growth has no limit, but you can only save so much money. And when certain tasks are automated, it turns out sometimes you can rethink the workflow of how the business creates value. So for example, if you could do something 1,000 times cheaper because of automation, say answering queries from customers, then rather than just taking the cost savings, you may be able to build a new type of customer service organization that serves people 1,000 times better. And this type of thinking can lead to growth opportunities that go well beyond cost savings. Let's take a look at some examples in the next video.